As you know, earlier this month, Canada and a group of other countries that all touch the Pacific Ocean announced the largest trade deal in history. The United States, Japan, Malaysia, Australia, Mexico, Chile, Singapore, and others. It's called the TransPacific Partnership. Now, I've got some crazy news about this treaty, but first, for those who aren't familiar with it, here's a 1-minute primer. The Trans-Pacific Partnership, or TPP, is not quite a free trade deal, but it's freer trade, and for an exporting nation like Canada, getting better access to huge markets, especially in the fast-growing continent of Asia, is so important. It's not perfect, but as Stephen Harper pointed out rather obviously, Canada really has two choices: be on the inside of the only game in town, or be left out. The treaty is the result of lengthy negotiations. Each country had their bargaining positions, their special interests they were trying to protect from true free trade. Frankly, I'm disappointed that Canada fought to protect our Quebec-based dairy cartels from competition, but I also understand politics. Again, any liberalization of trade is going to be good for us, better than nothing. Anytime we can get better access to a foreign country, well, that's good for our exporters. And anytime other countries have better access to Canadian markets, well, that means better prices and selection for Canadian consumers. Well, the NDP, of course, hates this treaty. They hate all free trade treaties. They generally don't like capitalism. They prefer government intervention, which is what a tariff or a duty or a quota is, which is too bad, actually. Cheaper imports might offend some protected industries, but it's a key to lifting people out of poverty, to get back to the, to get back to the protected dairy industry again. The price we pay to subsidize Quebec dairy farmers is that the other 35 million of us have to pay twice as much for milk and cheese and yogurt as, say, Americans do. And of course, that hurts low-income Canadians more than anyone else. Anyways, it's quite a coincidence that this multinational negotiation was finalized just 2 weeks before Canada's election day. The NDP immediately jumped on the treaty, opposing it. But Justin Trudeau refused to take a stand either way, saying he'd get back to Canadians after the election's over. Both Thomas Mulcair and Justin Trudeau said that they were offended with the Canadian government's secrecy throughout the negotiations, as if you would go into trade negotiations or any negotiation, like buying a house or a car, by publicly saying in advance what your negotiating positions are, what you'd trade away, what you wouldn't, what you really want to get, what you don't mind giving up. See, that's the difference between being in government and being in opposition. In government, you need a grown-up who actually has to negotiate head-to-head with the Americans and the Japanese versus the opposition leaders, a couple of debate club pundits. Anyways, the opposition kept saying it was all secret, and in fact, the legal text has not been finalized, so they smell a rat. Now look, a very detailed summary of the treaty has been released in public. It's published on the Canadian government's website. Check it out. But Mulcair said he was against it because the final text was still secret. And Trudeau pointed to that too, claiming it was the reason he couldn't take a stand. Well, here's the crazy news I mentioned a couple minutes ago. Canada's Privy Council Office, not the Prime Minister's office, which is political, but the Privy Council Office, which runs the non-partisan bureaucracy, they offered to Mulcair and Trudeau a confidential briefing on the details. As in, they could see anything, everything, because they were senior Canadian political leaders. They could be trusted with Canada's trade secrets. They could look under the hood. They could see what was agreed to even before the final text is being finalized by lawyers. They also offered that briefing to Elizabeth May of the Green Party, who actually took them up on it, but Trudeau and Mulcair refused. Say what? They complained about it being secret, but when they were offered to see it, they refused. So they're against the trade deal because it's a secret, as all negotiations are when they're underway. And that's one of their objections to it. It's secret, and so maybe it has terrible things hidden in it. But when the government says, come on, take a look for yourself, when their bluff was called, both Trudeau and Mulcair declined. They declined. They chose to remain unaware and uninformed of the supposedly secret details so they could denigrate it in Mulcair's case and plead ignorance in Trudeau's case to allow himself to avoid taking a position. See, if Mulcair had read it, and if there were no boogeyman in it, he couldn't then speculate about what terrible things were in it, because he'd know. He couldn't plain old make things up. And if Trudeau read it, or if his nanny, Gerald Butts, would have read it, Trudeau couldn't later say, I'll make up my mind about it later when I read it. He'd have to take a stand now. Can you believe this? And it goes back to my point. Stephen Harper's a grown-up, like him or not. Mulcair and Trudeau are like quarreling kids. I can't even imagine them representing our country's interests in a foreign negotiation. Can you? For TheRebel.media, I'm Ezra Levant.
Bye.